Hi there, and welcome back for Chapter 8 of The Lost Puppy. When we last left Christy, she was really upset because they had just rushed down to the animal center and Dad was with her, and there was no Lucky at the animal center. It was such a disappointment for her, and she was so worried about finding Lucky, and they're just leaving the animal center, and that's where we left off. So let's pick up at Chapter 8. Ready? Here we go. Christy trailed across the parking lot, tears still trickling down her cheeks, even though she kept wiping them away. Dad had his arm around her, but it wasn't making her feel any better. Dad was just unlocking the car when Christy heard someone calling behind them and running footsteps. Wait a minute! Lucy, the center manager, was chasing them across the parking lot, looking excited. She spoke into the phone in her hand. Yes, I've caught them. A brown and black dachshund? That's wonderful. Christy turned around to look at Lucy, her eyes wide with sudden hope. Someone's found him, she whispered. Lucy nodded at her, smiling hugely as she listened to whoever it was on the phone. Christy felt like grabbing the phone. She wanted to know where Lucky was right now. Finally, Lucy ended the call and grinned at Christy and Dad. 36 Elm Lane. A very nice-sounding young man named Jake Harper went jogging in Maple Grove Park last night and found a little brown and dog dachshund puppy with no collar or leash. He called us, but we were closed, so we tried again just now to ask if it was okay if we could bring the puppy in. Her grin got even bigger. I told him we'd save him the trouble and have you go there instead. I hope you don't mind. Thank you! Christy flung her arms around Lucy and hugged her tightly. Oh, that's the best news! She let go and looked up worriedly at Lucy. It has to be Lucky, hasn't it? She asked. There couldn't be another dachshund in the woods. Jake was sure it was your puppy. The age sounded about right, and dachshunds aren't that common. Now go and get him. Dad smiled at Lucy. Elm Lane, right? Thanks for all your help. Come on, Christy. Bye. Christy jumped into the car, fighting her seatbelt. She was suddenly so nervous that her fingers seemed to have stopped working. It had to be Lucky. It just had to. She couldn't bear to be disappointed again. Lucky was lying in the middle of the cushion with his head on his paws, watching as Mickey ate his breakfast. It was dog food from a tin this time, different than the food Lucky got at home. He liked the smell, but somehow he wasn't very hungry, even though there was also a big helping for him. You're quiet this morning, Jake crouched down by the basket. I hope you're not sick, especially since I think I found your owner. A young lady is very worried about you. Maybe you're just missing her, He stood up. Well, it won't hurt you, I guess, to miss just one breakfast. I suppose if you don't really feel like it. Do you want to go outside? Quick sniff around the yard? No? He patted Lucky's smooth head. Not long now, pup. Cheer up. Lucky had lifted his head to look at Jake while he was talking, but now that the big man was walking away, he let his head flap back down. He didn't want food, and he didn't want to go out in the yard. He wanted Christy. He wanted Christy pouring out his dog food and watching him lovingly while he wolfed it down. He wanted to race up and down the yard with her and Anna. He liked Jake and Mickey, and it was good to share a bed with Mickey for one night, but he didn't want to stay here. He'd never really known another dog before, especially not one that stood on his ear. This was Mickey's house, and Jake was Mickey's special person. Mickey had made that very clear, and Lucky didn't mind. He just wanted to be back home with Christy. Elm Lane wasn't far from the shelter, and Christy and her dad pulled up outside number 36 about 10 minutes later. They could hear barking from inside even before they rang the bell, and Christy looked up at Dad with shining eyes. It was a squeaky sort of bark, A bossy little dog's bark. It's him, isn't it? Crispy whispered. And Dad nodded, beaming. On the other side of the door, Lucky scratched and yelped, clawing at the wood panels. He could hear Christy. She'd come to find him. As the door opened, a small brown and black ball of fur hurled itself at Christy, barking and yapping. She picked him up, laughing and crying at the same time. Lucky, where did you go? We looked everywhere for you. Oh, I missed you. Lucky licked her face lovingly and then went back to jumping and wriggling and wagging his tail so hard his whole back end wagged too. He leaned dangerously far out of Christy's arms to lick Dad, and he even licked Jake. Jake laughed. Yes, you're happy now, aren't you, pup? Thank you for finding him, Christy said shyly, so quietly that Jake could hardly hear her over the loud barking. That's all right. He didn't have a collar. I guess he must have lost it. He was wearing one, Christy nodded. My little sister Anna fell over a tree root, and I was helping Mom cheer her up. I hooked Lucky's leash over a tree branch, and by the time we'd calmed Anna down, he was gone. Her voice squeaked with fright as she remembered it. I bet you went off chasing squirrels, didn't you? She asked Lucky. The woods were full of them. Then her eyes widened as Mickey lumbered into the hallway to see what was going on. Oh, you've got a dog too. She looked worried up at Dad and then at Jake. I'm really sorry if Lucky fought with him. Jake laughed. Actually, he tried being a bit bossy, but Mickey stood on him. After that, he was very good. Stood on him? Christy gasped, looking at Mickey. He was huge. He looked like he could squash Lucky. Oh, just on one ear for a moment. His way of showing Lucky who was in charge, I think. Has he been difficult with other dogs before then? Christy shuddered. He barks at them. I think he thinks he's as big as they are. She looked down at Lucky, who'd wriggled out of her arms and was dancing around Mickey's legs, nuzzling him playfully. But he's being so nice to your dog now. Jake grinned. Maybe he just needed a lesson on who's in charge of the pack. Have you tried puppy parties? Dad shook his head. I haven't even heard of them. Is it like training? We're registered for a class that starts in a couple of weeks. Oh, well, the people running your training might do puppy parties too. You should ask. It's like a safe place for young dogs to get to know each other. It teaches them how to get along and figure out who's in charge. But you're there to step in if there are any problems. You know a lot about dogs, Christy said wistfully. She wished she knew as much. She felt like she'd let Lucky down so badly, losing him in the woods, even if Mom had said that it wasn't her fault. Jake smiled at her. He really missed you, you know. Mickey distracted him last night, but when I woke him up to go outside to do his business before I went to bed, he seemed miserable. And this morning he just sat in the basket looking lonely. Didn't even want to have any breakfast. He didn't want me, even if I had been a dog owner for years. He's your puppy. Christy nodded, watching as Lucky wove in and out of Mickey's legs. Then he stopped suddenly, looking around as if he were checking to see if Christy was still there. She crouched down and he raced over to lick her hand quickly before going back to his game. See? Jake nodded at Christy. Your dog. Christy smiled. It was true. And she was going to make sure she never, ever lost him again. Dad had called home to let Mom and Anna know that they'd found Lucky. So Christy wasn't that surprised to find Anna in the front yard waiting for them. She was standing on the bottom of the gate, peering over the top, and she waved madly as soon as she saw the car. For once, Dad had let Christy hold Lucky on her lap instead of putting him in the travel case. Every so often as they drove along, he turned and looked up at her, as if to check that she was still there. And he kept giving her hand loving little licks. Lucky, Lucky. Anna flung open the gate and rushed over to them, with Mom chasing after her. "Oh, Christy, I'm so glad you've got him back," Mom said, smiling through the car window. Christy got out of the car, and Lucky licked Anna very gently. He could see that the white patch was on her face, and that it meant he had to be careful. "Good boy," Christy whispered. She went in through the gate, expecting Lucky to jump down and race around the yard like he usually did. But this time, he stayed snuggled in Christy's arms. There was nowhere else he would rather be. Wow. What a great ending to the story, huh? I'm so happy that Christy found Lucky, and I'm sure Lucky's very happy too. And here they are all together. Can you see? Whoopsie. There they are. I love happy endings, don't you? And that is the end of The Lost Puppy by Holly Webb. So join us next time for another great story. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss it. All right? Bye now until next time.